Welcome back to the RTS Podcast. Today I am talking to David Woolson. David is a powerlifter, formerly competing in the 93 kilo class, world-class powerlifter at 93, and he's recently moved up to the 105 class where he's already been making his presence known. And David and I started working together as coach-athlete around the summer of 2019, late summer 2019. And we have definitely had our share of ups and downs. As you'll hear in the podcast, David had an adductor tear that was not a good time. But we've also had a lot of really successful blocks. And so far, I would say on the balance, momentum is on our side and things are going quite well. What you should pay attention to in today's interview is how David talks about his training from a mentality standpoint, from a training skills standpoint, how he views his responsibilities as an athlete, what he views the responsibilities as a coach, how he thinks about what a training program is for. Things of that nature. I really enjoyed this conversation. I thought David's comments were really spot on, and he's got a lot of really useful things to say, either from a coaching standpoint or from an athlete standpoint. There's really a lot to be taken away from his comments. So I won't delay any further. We'll go ahead and bring you that interview. Hope you really enjoy this conversation with David Woolson. Let's get this going so we can help everybody out. Yeah.
Okay.
Why is it that everyone thinks that I'm like an ancient old man now?
Well, I guess, it's a lot of the stuff with, you've done a lot of stuff, right? Like people credit you for the whole RPE thing. And I know you don't credit yourself necessarily for that, but, or to the same degree that everybody else does, but the Godfather, can't be 34 years old.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm broke down.
Yeah, I think that probably factors in also, but
yeah.
and then now the crazy sailor beard and the gray hair and all that kind of stuff, you're really not helping the people believe it.
Well, I think maybe it's just wishful thinking. Because you get all these 20-something guys running around, and it's like, this is your future.
Yeah, maybe, but I was talking to AJ, one of the guys in my gym, and we were talking about the potential Mike T comeback, and we were like, yeah, it could happen. He's coming down in body weight, and he's going to come down on 105s and beat me, and I like seeing him come back, but I don't want to see him come back that much, and then we found out you were 34, and it was like, oh my God, he could do it. When it was wishful thinking when you were in your 40s, but now that you're 34, it's like, oh, I can, so I'll be 29 here in a month. So it's like, that's just 5 years into my future. I have to believe that I'll still be able to come back from things at that point. But I think you can do it.
Yeah. Getting, well, I guess mid 30s isn't exactly pushing 40, but being closer to 40 than 50 is probably stacking the deck in my favor.
Sure. Yeah. And Dave Ricks obviously has done what he's done. So you're not, you got plenty of time. You're only like 2/3 of the way there.
Right. But I do think that's funny. And I think I told you that somebody sent me a message the other day and was like, I think what you're doing is awesome. I'm 35, and I hope that when I'm your age that I'm still able to be lifting these weights.
Yeah, that is really funny. But yeah, I guess there needs to be an awareness campaign that you're not as old as people think.
I do wave the old man card a little bit much, like remembering the old days, and it used to be this way and it used to be that way. I do. Maybe that's a contributor as well. I'm glad we could start by kind of exploring my existential issues.
Well, I think I've realized, as I've gotten older, and I'm 29, right? So not really old at all. But, when I was 25 or 24, with me trying to get into coaching and doing all those kind of things. It's just it's a different, people assume somebody who's older is going to have, more experience and more expertise and all those kind of things. And so me just getting close to 30, it's like the things I say have automatic weight because of that. And, it changes the demographic that I can reach, right? Like I can reach younger people and I can reach, people in their 30s. But if I was 25, no way. So I don't know. I think it's people, maybe they just assume you're older because they already assume, like a certain level of expertise and those kind of things. So I think they all kind of go together. So yeah.
It's some really nice reasons. So I appreciate that.
Well, but I think it goes together, right? Like the more you lean on the image of age, then people will assume, the expertise is higher, and then, it just kind of goes together though.
I had somebody telling me that like growing my beard out is gonna help with like a wizardy persona. So I think I need to do that, like go wizard level.
Well, right. So it's that, and it's like I don't have time to keep up with personal appearance. I'm too busy focusing on things that actually matter.
See, I was gonna go like Paime, like a really long, like Fu Manchu kind of thing, and just like wisp it over my shoulder.
I think all of that, could be useful. There's lots of applications for all of those things, and I'm totally in on it.
Well, again, thanks for just starting out by helping me solve my issues. I appreciate that.
No problem.
But what's new with you, man? You're lifting weights and looking strong these days.
Yeah, actually, hopefully heading into a competition, again, that I'm excited about, moving forward and all that. And things are looking about as solid as they ever have. So that's always a good thing for sure, heading into a meet, which is good to say at this point, that, there are some early roadblocks, with us getting started, but now it's like, I think we're past it. I think we're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I know you're probably over talking about the adductor and everything at this point, but do you want to rehash it one more time?
And I think of it, in a maybe a different way than what maybe the expectation would be. Like I think the things that I like talking about with it are that not like, oh, you have to expect an injury and how to overcome those kind of things, but it's more about just like I think the things that got me through it quickly are the things that make me good at training in general, where it's just like always focusing on what can I control and what's in front of me. So yeah, like it really was I've never been put in a situation like that before. Right. And hopefully, most people don't ever have to encounter something where you have a really significant injury to where you can barely walk. Right. But in the moment, right after it happened, I remember not ever having any sort of like fear or, I never really thought like, well, there goes everything I've worked for. It was but I think that's kind of, that wasn't something that I had any practice with, but I think just the standard, me constantly focusing on what's in front of me and things that I can control kind of prepared me for that. And I think in a lot of ways, a huge significant injury that I knew right away, I was going to have to shift my focus to getting better and focusing on this is in some ways easier than the normal kind of injuries that people get, your knee hurts, right? And so if somebody's knee is bugging them and it hurts to squat, and man, it's been lasting for the last 2 months, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It's like the course isn't always clear with that, because how much do I need to pull back to get it better, or should I keep training, or so it's like those kind of lingering injuries sometimes are more frustrating than the big significant one. It's like, because I just said, okay, I have to totally change everything, and it was pretty easy to do. But yeah, so it was like I was probably more concerned / frustrated, like maybe 2 blocks ago, whenever it was like I felt like I was really healthy, but then started having some little issues here and there, and it was like, oh man, I don't want this to be a thing that starts showing up all the time. And that was, I felt like I was healthy and kind of past injury risk, but just that, it's like I didn't want any sort of, any lingering pain to just disrupt, a year of training or whatever. So it's like, the big significant one was much easier to handle than the little things sometimes.
Yeah, it's like little nagging injuries. It's like, well, maybe like wishful thinking almost. Like maybe it won't hurt today, or maybe it's fine now.
Right.
I think powerlifters and in general, like it's such a long road to get really good at any sport, but this sport also, that I think you kind of have to have some of that wishful thinking attitude. And that's maybe a situation where it doesn't serve us quite the best. Like, maybe it just magically healed, I catch myself thinking that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think you're probably a good candidate to kind of talk about the other side of it, where like as far as I know, yours was never something that was like, a major incident that
right.
crippled you or anything, but it was just something that was always there kind of nagging at you. And I think people underestimate the emotional component of that, like just kind of like the deep seated frustration and like, like you can feel it, it's like in your whole body, just, how annoyed and frustrated you are with the thing. And yeah, I never felt that. And I think it was a product of a bunch of, years of training and kind of, practicing what's in front of me. But yeah, I think I'm lucky in a lot of ways with that.
Well, I mean, it's an extension of kind of how you approach training. Like I've seen from you that you're just really level-headed about most everything. Like, I mean, not to say that there's not any emotion with anything, but it's not crazy highs or crazy lows. It's pretty level-headed all the time.
Yeah, and I think that is something I've practiced, and it's tough because my bias is that that's the right way. I try to get hyped and elevated for stuff that I think that matters, and then it's like we were talking about the last the peak week of my last block. I kind of went into it thinking like, I'm going to try to go for some stuff and. But we'll see. I don't really expect myself to turn loose. But then, as soon as I got the blessing that, like, yeah, you said that I was allowed to go full send, and like, I don't know that I've ever told myself that I can do that. It's like it was always like, you got to be smart. But then, the coach says, yeah, full send if you want to, and I took that and ran with it a lot more than I expected. Which was, it was just interesting that I felt like I could just turn loose, let the parachute go and just go for a full sprint. But yeah, and that was even in that moment, it was like I missed a few lifts, and it was never like raging about it. It was like, I knew I was just gonna let it turn loose, and whatever happens. So it's like it's just the balance between being able to really let yourself have fun and kind of go after it, but then be okay with the result, no matter what it is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of those situations too, where, I don't know. I think it's kind of neat to be in training situations where it's like, well, there's not a lot of consequences to, like, if you go for it and you miss, then it doesn't really change much.
Right.
In fact, it's good information a lot of times, because we don't take grindy lifts that much. It seems like on bench press, people are more likely to take like real max attempts, but
yeah,
squats and deadlifts are hard.
Well, yeah, and that was what I told you. It was there was at least some level of apprehension with getting started with you with coaching in the beginning, because I was aware it was going to be more intensity than I've done in the past. And I think some of that, is self-preservation, on my own side. So like if I'm writing it and it's like, oh man, that just looks hard. And so I like, sometimes I wouldn't write things to be that difficult. And I knew, that's probably going to be what's coming for me. But yeah, so, all the intensity, but I told you, it's like, I do kind of find it difficult sometimes to really, take it. Like, I got some triples at 9, and it was like, that's pretty daunting,
Yeah.
Like that doesn't really excite me, especially if I'm feeling good, that'll excite me. It's like if your hormones feel good, you think like, oh, heck yeah, I can go after something really big here. But if it's just like a standard day or even like a slightly subpar day, it's like, that just sounds really hard.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's that's an interesting, tightrope to walk there. But yeah, bench press, it's a little bit easier to, accidentally hit that 9, 10 RPE. And it's really not quite the same thing as, the 9 or 10 on the squat.
Yeah, man, I've had a very similar experience just recently, just today, even, as I've been reintroducing just classic back squat training. It feels so freaking heavy, like just impossibly heavy, but then it moves okay. And it's just because I haven't held any weights like this for a long time. I'm still strong enough to move it, but I'm just completely not acclimated to the loading at all. So it's messing with my senses a bit. So like I'll take a weight out, and it's got to where it does make me pretty nervous before approaching one of these sets, even though like on paper, like I know it's going to be fine, but just today, like I caught myself thinking like, so it's going to be hard. So what? Like, yeah, it's going to be hard. Yeah, you might grind out the reps, and I did pretty. Well, they were the grindiest reps that I've done in a long time, because my strength is down a little bit at the start of the block. But anyway, it was interesting to approach it that way, and just kind of the attitude of like, well, you have to do this. There's like no point in being upset about it. I guess just go, just try hard. Like I remember from basic training, they would, you have to do a lot of push-ups and just whatever body weight tortures they can think of, and you do push-ups until you can't do push-ups anymore. And at first, like they're yelling and everything, and that's kind of, it's new. So a lot of people kind of have it gets to them a little bit. They get upset about it or something like that. But at some point you realize we're going to do push-ups until I can't do push-ups anymore. And then I can't do push-ups, so they'll yell, and then we'll do some more push-ups. Like,
right.
I get it.
Understand what's coming. Right.
Right. Yeah.
It's going to be difficult. There's going to be yelling and screaming. Like that's fine. You shouldn't be afraid of it.
Yeah. Hey, this is going to be a slightly unpleasant experience, and then you'll move on.
Right. Yeah. And I think I tell myself kind of what you just said. And if I'm coaching people, especially, in person, if I see some apprehension about something being heavy, I tell people pretty much exactly that. Like it is going to be really heavy, right? Like people, like, I don't know, when somebody shouts like lightweight, or something like before a max effort attempt, like that really annoys me a lot of times. Like, how do you expect that to motivate me, to do my max effort back squat, right? Like if I tell myself like, oh, it's easy, and I pick it up and like, that's really heavy. Like, I don't know that you're, shouting for me like, oh, it's so light is going to help. But if I go into it thinking ahead of time, this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life, be ready for it. Like that's, a little bit, I don't know, better. It's like just embracing it in that moment instead of, being like, oh, I hope it's easy this time. And
people are going to yell that at you at the Arnold now. They're like, I got a squat, and they're going to be like, it's really heavy, David.
It's so heavy. Hey, it might help actually. Or like, the people yelling like, good brace, or like, I know. Thank you. I forgot. Yeah. So now I'll get that one in there too. It's so heavy. It is.
Well, no, I get what you're getting at too. And I think that's a cause of some missed third attempts a lot of times, is that, you take the opener and it's like an opener, and then maybe say you smoke your second attempt, it's faster than you expected or something like that. So you put a weight on there that is probably within your grasp, but you have to be ready for the fight, and I find that a lot of people are just not. And I mean, that's it goes back to training too. And I know that it's kind of a trend these days to train at really low RPEs and just push tons and tons and tons of volume. And that's fine, I guess. But the thing that always did to me was that I wouldn't be ready for the fight. Like, I feel like I have to practice that to some extent.
Well, yeah. And I mean, even you talking now about how, I know the last block you were doing like sets of 7 with like, I think you got to like 605 or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying, oh, it feels heavy on my back, but it's moving fine. I'm like, Mike, I'm doing 605, often, and it feels heavy on my back. It is just heavy. So maybe you're stronger, or it's actually, that's not ever going to change. It's just going to keep feeling that heavy. So,
well, I mean, that's possible too, right? Like maybe I just kind of forgot what it, and I'm not even tongue in cheek, but like maybe I just kind of forgot what that weight feels like, I mean, that's totally possible. I do remember like once upon a time back in my equip days, see, that's why people think I'm an old man, but
way back when.
Right. I walked out 1,000 pounds just to walk it out. And I do remember that feeling like impossibly heavy, like I'm not sure I can move my feet heavy,
So that's an interesting thing. And I know this is like, I guess maybe a tangent, but I don't know if you've ever programmed heavy walkouts for people, but a lot of times, and I think most people would say this, you pick up your actual, your single 8 or whatever, and it feels lighter than the last warm up, and a lot of it is just, the intensity going into it and focus and those kind of things. Right.
Yeah.
So I would have a hard time imagining a heavy walkout being something that I could get really, I don't know, invested in, so, let's say, if the 700 pounds, we're going to, so I've squatted that a few times, but we're going to walk that out, once a week in training. I kind of feel like, to me, that would have the opposite effect. I wouldn't get more used to it. I would just, because I wouldn't ever get invested in picking up the weight and making it feel light and excited. And I would just keep picking up 700 pounds and have it feel just so heavy. And I think it would do the opposite to me, is that I would, instead of getting more acclimated to something that's heavy, I would just think, no way, no human being can do that. So yeah, like with the 1,000, maybe it was scary enough that you got fully invested in it, but yeah, that just sounds like it would do the opposite to me.
No, I get that, and I think probably a better way to go about that type of training is to use equipment, knee wraps or squat suits. I was just talking to John Garfano today, and he did his first equipped competition this weekend, and it went really well. But one thing that he noticed is that since putting on the equipment, his raw squat went up like crazy. It didn't have the same effect on his bench, but for whatever reason on the squat, I think it's just the exposure to heavier weights. Still having to be very serious about it. Like it just kind of promotes that anxious response, and
right.
It doesn't affect everybody that way, but it seems like it's just one block, right? But it seems to have been that for him in that case. So I wonder if, and we've done stuff like that with bands or chains or different things, not a lot in recent years, but we used to do more of it. But I think that's kind of the utility of some of that stuff, is that it's the overload work, but it also, you have to do something with it. It's not just like, here, pick it up and hold it, and right. Magic happens.
Yeah, and I think just as maybe a practical thing for like what I've seen kind of a similar result with, or other people maybe wanting to go a similar direction, is just like the really heavy like tempo squats. Like a tempo double at 9. Like that second rep is kind of what I would imagine. Me doing a heavy single with an equip. It's like I can do it, but I have to. If I let myself, get out of position or relax, any bit, this thing is not going to go well. So it's just on that really, really hard, eccentric that I'm really having to put a lot of work into. That effort there, I think, is, the thing that really transfers. So I don't know. I mean, to me, it may not be the weight on the bar, but it's just the effort on something that, has to be some weight on the bar. But, right. At 9 RPE doing a 6-second eccentric, I think that's the effort that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something about those that, again, it's one of those weird things that I haven't found it to be effective with everybody, but it's definitely a non-negligible percentage of people seem to really get something out of that. We were talking in like a coaches meeting yesterday about that very thing, and that some of the guys mentioned that they have lifters who are kind of on the skinny side, I guess, and they tend to in general not respond that great to high intensity work. They do better when it's like really low intensity, a lot of volume kind of stuff, except for the slow tempo stuff. Like the slow tempo stuff, they can drop the reps, crank up the RPE, and it's not like it hurts the loads that much. Like a 6-second eccentric, right. Yeah, it's like take a double at 9 RPE, 6-second eccentric versus normal tempo. Yeah, it's a little bit lighter weight with a 6-second eccentric, but it's not like crazy light weights, so it's a way to, I don't know. I think there's something to that, but I don't really know what it is.
No, I totally agree. I think most people are significantly better at those than they think, and I think it's just about saying what we were saying earlier, right? Is just being ready for the weight to be really hard, and I think a lot of times people go into single at 8 or whatever, and they think I'm going to make it move so fast. But if you say, okay, double at 9 or, with a 6-second eccentric, it's like they're just ready to work for a long time. And then you find, maybe I could be applying a little bit more of that to the regular lifts, hopefully.
Well, this kind of goes back to the thing that you said a few minutes ago. You were talking about being good at training in general. And that calls to mind a conversation I had with a friend of mine where we were talking about training itself being a skill. Like, yeah, there's things written down on your paper as far as a program, but that's not a complete instruction. Like if you were to imagine like giving a robot, the training program, like it's not sufficient instructions to tell you every little thing that needs to happen. Like it's pretty broad strokes. And there are a lot of decisions that athletes make every day that matters. I'm not sure that there's like a real question on the end of this, but
I think it's a good thing, even to acknowledge, like as an athlete, right? And if I'm coaching people, there's obviously going to have to be live decision making, and I think a big part of it would be people being able to interpret the objective with, what we're trying to accomplish with the tempo squats or whatever we're doing, and stick as close to that with whatever variables we have. And, if we were so concerned with everything being exactly perfect, I think there's an underlying assumption with that we as the coach are 100% certain that what we wrote is perfect. And then, but it's like, we're not, right? We have an idea and we're trying to get a result from it, or just try to, get some sort of response that we can interpret and change things later. But yeah, it's like, if the athlete is so fixated on trying to make it exactly what was on paper, it may end up lacking the intention that was there, right? And if they're not able to adapt. So I think it's important to interpret what we're trying to do rather than just exactly what's on paper. But yeah,
right on, 100%. Like, and I've seen some programs written that, to my eye, look like they're overly detailed. That like to the point of like prescribing, like even like pre-barbell warm-ups. Like, I want you to do this many bird dogs on this side and that many of these things on that side, and like to me, it's just like just do a few, because whether I say do 10 or do 12, like that, there's no way that I'm going to just miracle the right number. You do them until it feels kind of about right. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Right. And exactly. That's, I think that the pre-lifting warm-up stuff is the perfect example where, if you were to, listening to more, the physical therapists and those kind of things, talking about advances in their fields, there's so much like, look, we don't really know, we have a model that we start with, and then we kind of go from there. And so having something that's concrete, that like, here's the exact perfect thing to fit X, injury, or like, on our side, we say, here's the exact perfect program I just wrote you for this month. Do it perfectly. It's like, that's a pretty bad assumption to start with, right? So we have to have some flexibility there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's psychology is such an interesting thing too, because like you can know that, but then I'm sure you've had this experience too, where like a client, an athlete will need to adapt the plan, like for whatever reason, things are not going right. So you say, why don't you skip this, change this to something else? And they feel bad about it, like they failed the plan. But you can't really fail the plan. The plan is there to work for you, not the other way around.
That is, and then whenever I get that react, because it's it's not super common, but it is common sometimes. Like people will apologize, like,
right,
hey man, I like this whatever exercise. It's just really I can't do it right, and I'm really sorry. It's like it's okay, we were trying to do something that we thought would make you strong, and it's doing the opposite. Like,
right.
It's not your fault, but I guess that's a funny thing too. I was having that conversation with somebody recently about having a coach, right? I've coached myself for my whole life now. And so it's been really nice being able to change the things that I'm going after in every session. And I think it's one of the biggest things I've noticed is it's removed any, not all, but most of the anxiety of me feeling like I need to have a good session a lot of times, because it's not my fault. Right. And so, I'm doing everything I can, as an athlete, I'm going in, I'm focused, I'm doing all this. And if it starts going poorly, well, it's not on me. Right. And my job is just to do the best that I can with the, whatever was in front of me, make the little adaptation, just session to session to do it to the best of my abilities. And then, my job in the relationship is to do that process as well as possible. And then, on the other side, your job would be to interpret those things and change it to continue the progress. And so that has been really, really useful for me because, if I go in thinking like, man, I really want to hit X number on squat today, I want that because I'll be that for next week and, kind of have this trajectory. And then I, warming up and it's like, it's not really there. Right. But, in the past, even so I'm on, week 2 of this block and, this week is a little bit better than last week, but it was like, we're heading to this competition. So I think we all kind of talk ourselves into thinking like, it's going to be big jumps this time. Yeah. And so if it was me writing my own program and I'd say, well, it's a little bit better, but what can I do differently? And then I get off the keyboard. Right. But yeah, in this case, it's been really helpful to remove a lot of that anxiety and just focus on having the best session every day that I can. And then, kind of being, just not attached to the results, either way, getting worked up emotionally about it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Do you think that like your understanding of the process has been, I mean, I guess maybe this is a question with an obvious answer, but so to what extent would you say that your understanding of this process has been improved by the fact that you're a coach as well? Like you've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I expected. It's nice to be on the other side and to feel all the positive things, but I think at the same time it's given me a little bit more insight into the things that like I don't feel, if that makes sense. So like we were talking about how even I am and like level-headed and these kind of things and so just with the ups and downs of training, those are things that I'm used to and I can adapt to. And like from my side as an athlete, it's like even if I just recently, like last week, right, I'm trying to mess with my deadlift a little bit, my knee was hurting, and so I send you this big long message that was basically like could have been 2 sentences. It was like, weird deadlift day to day, my knee kind of hurt, not a big deal, right? But it's like I wanted you to know where we were at. Yeah. But that I was okay with it. And so it was probably like, it was too much, but just like, but like, I'm totally okay with that situation. Yeah. And so that's a circumstance, like somebody has a weird bad day and, it's like, we're trying to mess with something and it didn't really go the way that we wanted it to right away, but we still need to give it time. So that circumstance, I think, especially, week one of a block heading into a competition, is a really difficult situation for a lot of people. And so I, like I said, practicing being level-headed and all those kind of things, it was like, fine, move on, live to fight another day. But I think in that moment, it kind of helped me realize, like, this circumstance exactly right here, I'm handling it well. And I think I know me and Mike are on the same page, but it's important for me to understand that other people will feel differently and not have the same amount of experiences that I do. And like, because I feel, like 10% panic in the 90% calm, right? But if it were 25%, 30%, it's like, that starts to creep in a little bit more. So I do think, even though like I've been able to manage those things pretty well, I think at times just having to communicate with somebody else has helped me realize, if I was having to send this message and, I was panicked, it would be a lot more difficult. So it's kind of increased my empathy a little bit, surprisingly. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That it helps you to see, kind of where other people are at. That totally makes sense to me. And I think from a coaching standpoint, that's probably an easy thing to miss. I know that that's a thing that I've felt now and then, is that, like, say if I'm coaching like an intermediate lifter, I'll assume things, not intentionally, but just to make assumptions about things that they know or skills that they should have that maybe they don't have yet, because it's been a while since I was at that stage or something like that, right? That can be an issue too, and I don't know. I guess that's another reason why it's good to maintain practice with a wide variety. But. Well, yeah, right. I mean, it can be as simple as like nutritional stuff, or people ask me about like creatine, so it's like things that I basically don't take for granted. Like I would have never thought that you would have even been thinking that question, right? like they say, hey man, what do you pay any attention to your nutrition or anything? Like, yeah, I do. Like, do you not? Like, oh my gosh, I've been working with you for 6 months, 8 months, and I'm just now realizing that you've put zero thought into nutrition. Like, I mean, that could make a huge difference in our results, right? And so it's like all those things that I kind of assume, the people that I communicate with most frequently are like those things everybody just does naturally and just take for granted. And so it's all the little things that I kind of forget that are even part of the process at that point. But I mean, that's a skill too, right? Like, so for every moment that you have like that, you're like, oh shit, I guess I shouldn't forget that again. And it certainly happens. Yeah, right on. But I guess to that end, I mean, does it cause you to do anything different as a coach? Like, well, let me frame this a little bit better. I guess, have you changed, you mentioned being self-coached like your whole career up to this point. And now, I mean, it's been several months now. Have you changed anything about how you're coaching other lifters as part of, this experience? Like, I guess I'm thinking more like process wise, but I suppose it could be anything as well. I think I actually expected more to change when I started, because, I think, my coaching process and everything has just been built up kind of like, it's gotten more and more formal as I've gotten more and more people. And then now, it's a full-time job. So it's pretty well formalized, and, you kind of see tidbits of how people, create their spreadsheets and, onboarding questionnaires and those kind of things. So it's like all those things were kind of intact. But I expected to be influenced more, like, with the programming stuff that you're giving to me. Is like, I was a little worried at first, without telling anybody, that it was going to be hard to separate myself. And you see that all the time, online, like the the meme or whatever of people like, if you're buying programming from a coach who's, getting coaching, you're just buying the other guys, trickling down. And I was like, I don't think that'll happen, but like, I don't know. Right. And so I think maybe like the first few weeks it was kind of difficult because I was so excited about things, and it's like, it's perfect. Everyone needs to be doing this. And then it kind of shifted, and so it was easier for me to change, like, well, these things, basically start, thinking about it actually analytically again and saying like, oh, I think the vernacular here makes sense, but it's not necessarily the specifics. And so it's, right at first, I feel like I was super excited and tried to give everybody stuff that was really similar. And I was like, but things like chains and those kind of things, I would have never, and I think chains and like bands on bench press are things that I really like at this point, but maybe I was so anti, West, like I didn't want to give people those things or try those things because I was entrenched in nope, we shouldn't do that. We should never. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, cool. Well, that's a little bit of a broader horizon there that I can go after. So yeah, that was one of at first I thought it was going to be difficult, and then it ended up being totally fine overall. So yeah, I'm pleased to say that it hasn't affected things too much.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, I never, like, I wouldn't expect you to be influenced by the details of the programming too much, and I mean, as for the rest of it, the processes and stuff, like, who knows? It's hard for me to know as well, like, whose processes are looking like what, we tend to develop a lot of these things in our own little corners, and unless.
Well, I will tell you that the pivot week thing I stole pretty much immediately. Was like, it was funny that was one of the things, like, from the outside looking in, that I was most resistant to. Like, when just, seeing your information on YouTube and those kind of things, I saw that and I was like, I can't possibly see how that would be better. And but I never tried it, and I just, kind of was uninterested in doing that. Mm-hmm. And then after, the first week of our training was a pivot, and then we moved into the real developmental block, and I loved it. I like, mentally, I think was probably the biggest thing. It's like, if we're doing a traditional kind of deload, that it's like your same training, but just, slightly less. And so like you're not motivated, and it's still kind of heavy, and it just feels like really boring, and it all feels bad. So like the deload weeks, are notoriously, horrible training weeks. You just like, just no fun, right? There's no energy. You're going in just like hoping to feel better. And the pivot, really was, even if it's, high bar sets of 10 and those kind of things, it ended up being a whole lot more fun and mentally engaging and all of that. And so that was something I was like, you know what, we're going to throw this in. And I think everybody pretty much hopped right on board with that. So that was something that I do think is a really, really good thing that may be specific / process, but that's something that I think is something that's really, really well done.
Thank you. I think it's, I was always kind of the mindset that, we like training, in general. And I think we like hard training too. There's kind of this meme about like more than 5 reps is cardio, but like really deep down, I don't think powerlifters care that much. I think we want to do some hard shit in the gym. And yeah, it's more fun to lift heavy weight than lightweight in a lot of reps, but whatever, PR is a PR. And
I think it's the good thing is having a goal. Yeah. Right. Like if it's, a high bar, set of 10 at, 8 or 9, instead of, a comp squat single at a 5 and or it's like whatever. Right. It's like, if you're just doing something similar to what you were doing, but you have a goal for the day that's different than what you have been doing. You open up your program and you say, okay, cool. Well, I'll try my hardest at that one thing. Yeah. And then you try your hardest too hard at safety bar split squats but that was the thing, right? Like, so right, yeah. I hurt myself on my I think it was like my 6th rep of a set of 10 on my last set. So I almost made it, but it happened because I was motivated and invested in the training. And like hindsight, it was probably a little reckless on my end to be doing an exercise. I had 350 pounds on the safety squat bar doing, split squats, and it's like, cool. I was able to manage the thing, but I just took it too far. It was a little reckless, but the fact that I was motivated to be training that week and enjoying it, I think, me getting hurt was an anomaly there, but me staying engaged that whole week is an important thing. So yeah. I use it as a joke now, but it's something that I still look back on and say, I would have done it again, maybe not that hard, but yeah, it was, that's a cool thing that we're doing.
Yeah. It's not like revamping the entire approach, but it's more just, learning from how things went, I suppose. Right. That's a thing that I look back on, and that was on the back of a block that went like way beyond our expectations. Like your improvements in the block previous to that, like, I don't know, there's kind of this normal response range that I've come to expect, and your response was way better than that. And no one ever likes to hit the brakes when, like, the whole idea of things going too well. Yeah, okay, I get how that, is conceptually possible, but whenever you're in that moment, it's always a difficult thing to say, like, oh no, let's hit the brakes a little bit here because it's increased exposure or something like that. And because there's no guarantee of it either, it might just be, and we've seen this before too, where it's just, nope, it's just the best training block of your life. And, and just take it while you can, and keep the good times rolling and learn from it and build on it. And on the other end, there is an increased risk associated with that. And it's so hard to tell. Well, it's impossible to tell anything like causality in this case, because like you said, in this case, it was the last set of the second week of the pivot, so it's not like, we had just accumulated this huge fatigue debt, but I do wonder to what extent things were interrelated there,
I got like 50 or 60 pounds stronger on my squat in I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks. And then, the safety bar, like I just felt the strongest I've ever felt. And so then I think, going into that, so, like you said, the second week, I wouldn't expect to be fatigued or anything, but it was, I think the biggest thing that we can point out would be that I got 50 or 60 pounds stronger in my squat. I squat with the wide stance and everything. There's a huge, my stability in my squat is so high. Like I didn't get hurt squatting, but I got hurt doing the furthest thing from my competition squat, from a wide stance squat to, one-legged split squat. And my legs had gotten significantly stronger, but I probably I'm positive, wasn't challenged doing that thing. So, the guy that I worked with for, rehab stuff to get, past it, he obviously really, really good at what he does, got me back to squatting max effort stuff like 6 weeks later. But, it was, there's a little bit of like argument, me pushing back against him. He's like, well, you need to really make sure that you're training these, one-legged things and doing all that, if you don't want to get hurt again, or I just never do it again. I just because I think I'm fine. With I've never been hurt squatting, all of that is totally safe for me. Right. So what's the problem here is doing something totally opposite. So I'll just never do, split squats ever again. And he's like, well, that's probably not the right way to, it's the only thing that's hurt me. So I still do the split squats, but I'm not invested in spending, months getting my split squat to be super stable.
Right. Well, I've got one more question for you, and then we'll wrap things up. But question from the audience on this one. do you like being a 105? And to go along with that, do you think everyone should gain weight?
Yeah. I think it was funny because going to the 105, like it happened once the decision was made. Like once I said I'm gonna go up, and I started trying to gain weight and all that, and it's tough for me to think with the going up a weight class on its own, because I went up the weight class, signed up with you, like just like I felt like it was a fresh start. Mm-hmm. and so if you're the going up the weight class, I think was really motivating for me, because I started thinking like, oh, I'm gonna squat better, I'm gonna bench better, and I have a new coach. I like a lot of things are gonna motivate me to be stronger and better, and so it went really well. And so it's hard for me to separate those two things. And I think it was, I don't know. Yes, going up the weight class has been, a whole lot of fun. I definitely feel stronger. I'm more comfortable lifting a lot of times. It's all that is good. I don't really I feel like I look pretty similar, right? Like it's like the same, just a little bit softer. And it's like, yeah, it's fine, right? Like now that I'm almost 30, it's a little bit more okay to be softer, I think. So if I was 25 or something, I probably wouldn't like it quite so much. But it's like it's still 105 isn't that heavy. So
man. When I saw you at Raw Nationals, so the difference between in Sweden at Worlds and then a few months later at Raw Nationals, I just thought you looked jacked. You added a lot of muscle mass.
It is funny. I look back on the 93 me, and at the time, I was muscular, right? But
right.
I look at that and I see skinny now. I look at the 93 David, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you look like a little boy. And so now I do think that it's something that me getting bigger and, people like interpreting it as like, oh dude, you look so jacked. That yeah. I kind of feel that way too. So even though it's softer, I still feel like as a power lifter, I feel comfortable and excited about what I'm doing, thinking like, I'm a big, strong dude now, right? I don't need to be super lean. The goal is to move a whole lot of weight. And so I think that's kind of when I look at myself, I can see that more instead of just seeing like this lean guy. Right. So yeah, I think that aspect, and that's probably unique to being a male too, is that I look at myself having gained weight, and I think like, yeah, but you look like you could be way stronger now. So yeah, I do think, if you're struggling to get stronger, if you're feeling like you're having to diet, and like if you feel small at all, then going up can be a really exciting thing for you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I like to joke with some of my lifters that nobody lifted weights to be small.
Yeah,
I mean Dan obviously
Green,
right.
No skinny champs.
Right. I mean, there's obvious limits to that, and it's not caveat, but
sure.
There is a grain of truth to it too. Like you lift weights, you're participating in a sport that kind of rewards your muscular development. So
yeah, and you wake up and you look in the mirror, and if you see the guy that's like super lean, let's say you're dieting, right, and you're going down a weight class, and you look and you say, man, I look really lean today. I don't think that the next step in your mind is going to be, man, you look lean, you look shredded. I bet you're super strong today too. but if you look in the mirror and you say, man, you look big, well, I bet you'll be pretty strong. So I think those things kind of go together.
Are you trying to make sure that I'm going to stay in the 120s?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Man, I don't know. 105 is a long way away from me. But
well, maybe in the time that it takes you to get your weight down, my strength will be going up, and we'll meet somewhere around there. And I
don't know, man. Maybe by then I'll be a Masters 2 or something like that.
That's true. If you're not already, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting older as we speak, so you never know. Man, thanks a lot for chatting with me. I really enjoyed this.
Sure.
But